Have you ever wondered what games you should keep or you should lose? Find out here at Purge Reviews.
Legacy of You is a solo-only board game from Garphill Games. Now, Garphill Games have put out some of the most popular games, and they have a string of games that have been huge hits. What you're going to have here is a solo-only game and kind of a new universe for them with the same kind of look and feel of the other games. This is a campaign game. Yes, I suppose you could play just one game and be done, just play that, although the rules aren't really set up for that. It's really meant to be played over 7 victories or 7 losses and then some mix in there. It's not a legacy game, even though it has legacy in the title. I think that might be a little confusing for some people, but you're not going to be ripping up cards. You can totally reset this game and you can play it again, and I would highly actually recommend doing that, as you're only going to see about 40 to 60% of the content your first time through. As you win, lose, other cards come out, you defeat certain things, the story elements are going to come out. Let's talk about that story really quickly. The story's a little disjointed. It's not a narrative that's on a linear path. There are certain cards, so you might get this story later in one thing and earlier in another, but it all kind of is generic enough to kind of flow through as you're building up this canal. Now, each game is going to play very, very similar. It's a Euro-style game where you're getting resources, converting those resources to fulfill the needs of to kill the barbarians or gain other cards or to meet the goals of the game. And I don't want to give any spoilers out, but the goals will kind of shift sometimes of what you're trying to do. But for the most part, in each game, you're building that canal up and trying to get a boat to the end. And as you build that up, story elements will come out and you'll be utilizing your resources. Now, I think unless you play this game quite a few times, there are going to be times where you lose, and there isn't a lot you're going to do about that, but that's going to progress the story. So even when you lose, good things are going to happen. And that's something to talk about briefly, is that when you lose, you're going to get helpers and things to help you out in the game. When you win, there are going to be things to make life tougher. So it's going to be self-balancing as you go through. You're never going to get so darn good that you can just crush everything, because as you win more and more and more, the game is going to put hurdles in front of you with the hopefully or possibility of at least losing some of those games that you're going to be playing in. Now, the game is fun. It's a worker placement, hand management, resource management type of game. And you're going to be doing a lot of conversions, taking these shells and making it into a person, or taking these shells, converting them into provisions, etc. So there is going to be some luck about what cards you start with. Some cards are just going to be better to start with, or a mix of cards, some workers, some provisions, some shells, some bricks, some wood, etc. Get a little bit of everything, or do you want to pound certain colors? Now, let's say your starting hand ends up with exactly the colors of the random barbarian they came out. Well, that's going to be helpful to you, right? You're going to get a little earlier of a start in the game. You're going to be discarding less cards from your deck, because there's some deck building into this. So there is luck in it. And the luck factor, I don't feel is extremely high. You're going to be mitigating that some as you play through. But I think people who are used to Garphill Games may be a little luckier than they want to anticipate. But that is part of the game, that you're going to be fighting that. Now, you can't look at this as one game. This is a series of games, a campaign, if you will. We're going to be winning 7 games or losing 7. So over the life of that, I think that luck will be spread out. If you happen to get a bad draw, that's okay, because that's where the story went this time. And sometimes you want to go to that story and you just reset and you're on to game 2 or 6 or 7 as you're going to be progressing through. You kind of don't want to win just 7 in a row. That'd be pretty impressive. Because you want some of the story elements to come out from losing and things that will help you. And there's little hurdles you have to bounce over, little helpers that you would get. And that all it adds to the flavor of the game and really the fun of the game as I'm going through. So I don't look at this as something I want to dominate. I want to flow and learn about the family and the barbarians that are coming in and some new guys. And it's very, very fun and very good package. This is a great solo game. It's not a legacy, which really adds to it, so you can keep playing it over and over again. I ran through the game twice, all the way through, winning and losing, and I had a really good time. This is what I'll keep in my collection. I really do enjoy this one. So if you're looking for Ameritrash, you want to just roll some dice and stuff, this is not it. This is a resource management Euro game where you're not just going for the top score. There are goals to accomplish in the game. There are story elements in. Very neat package. Shem Phillips definitely has a winner on his hands here, if you can get the production of this game out, because I think this game could scratch an itch for a lot of gamers. I don't usually like to play Euro games solo, because it's always like beat a score, or it kind of feels artificial here. This is a solo game designed for solo gamers, and it works beautifully. Great job. and one we liked quite a bit. Keeper for us. Here is Legacy of You. It's a little small box game from Garphill Games in their line. You're going to have a little promo set that came with mine. We'll set that aside. You're going to have your storybook. I'm not going to show you too much of this, but I can just kind of show you. You're going to have numbers you're going to go to, and you're going to read. This is where the main story is going to come from. You'll get a rule book, which we'll take a look at in a few minutes. Now, the board itself is actually quite small, which is kind of what you want for a solo game. You do want something that you can reach across. It's not going to be multiple people reaching. I think it works for this. A lot of iconography on this, but most of it's worker placement or cards that will be coming off. Then you have probably the greatest insert I've ever had in a game. I'm not sure if you can see here, but on the other side here, it kind of tells you where things go, and you can put these items in that spot. So you have these little workers. You're going to have these little buildings that will come out in different colors, your bricks and your wood. Now, it is kind of weird that these two are cardboard, and then everything else is like your nice wooden bits. It's kind of weird. The cards are all good. I'm not going to show you any spoilers, but you can see the artwork on it is beautiful, and the icons and graphic design are really, really good as you're going through. All the icons can be clearly seen, and nothing takes precedent over that. This insert is fantastic. The cards all fit in here. You can see here that there's words where all the cards go, so you know exactly where things are going to be. So, this is it. Components are great, especially for a solo-only game. Here is a rule book. You can see it's a picture of the front of the box. Let me open it up. I'm going to give you an introductory to the campaign, because the game is really intended to be a campaign game. Picture of all of the components, which is fantastic. Then you're going to have the campaign setup and the game setup as you're going through. Then you have the round structure here. This is everything you'll be doing on a turn, and then it'll break it down into more detail about how you're doing things and going through, which is fairly excellent. You can see there's examples and there's pictures everywhere you go that break everything down, resetting the campaign and what to do in between games. And then this is really nice to have this cheat sheet on the back of it. You'll be referring to this a lot, and the round structure will be fantastic. So very good job on this. The setup is very easy. You take your deck of townsfolk cards and you're going to shuffle them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're going to take 10 cards and you're going to put them here. This is going to be kind of your starting deck, and this will be the deck that will see the board. Then you're going to take the barbarians and you're going to set one out here face up, and the remainder of the deck can go to the side. You're going to take the cards that have this and you're going to randomly set those out. You're going to take a 5-6 card and put it here, a 3-4 card and put it in the 3 and 4 slot, and these will kind of randomly go out. A 1-2 will go in the first 2 spots. You have additional 5-6s. Those will just go aside, and you'll be filling up the board and have a little bit of randomness to it. You're also going to take the victory cards and you'll shuffle these, putting on top of the yellow. This will be more for the campaign. The same thing with the blacks. You'll shuffle these up and put it over the gold one. And you can kind of set these aside because these are going to be the win-loss conditions. Now you have the buildings out. You have your wave here behind your boat, and you're set up and ready to play. I'm just going to show you a simple flow of the game. Each round, you're going to draw here in the daytime phase. So you're going to draw 4 cards from this deck. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this will be your opening hand for the turn. In addition, I'm going to get 1 white worker, 1 shell, and 1 provision. So that would go into my inventory for the turn. Now, if I had built any of these purple huts anywhere, I would get the ability to use white would be equal to yellows, or if I had built one of these, I would get a free worker. If I built one of these, I would get a white worker, etc. But at the beginning of the game, none of those are built up. Then I can start utilizing my cards. Each card will have something in brown at the top. So, for example, if I were to utilize this card, I would get a free black worker from the supply, and I would have it to utilize this turn. And that would go into my personal discard pile, which will be shuffled up when this deck is empty. Or if I really needed what's in the red, I could give up. I could take my black worker and a provision, but I got to discard it over here, and it will not be shuffled back into my card. You want to be careful about that, because if you run out of cards in this deck, you will lose. The other way to lose is if the wave catches up to your boat, or if the barbarians fill up this entire row here, then you're overrun. You win by fulfilling all of these canals and getting your boat off the end and surviving until the end of the round. So I will give up this white one to get a goodie here. and I will be able to start processing this. This one gives me 2 provisions. I would grab those into my supply. And this one also gives me a yellow worker. So that's a pretty good start to a turn. Now I have these workers that I could utilize here and be able to put out. So I could go maybe put this yellow worker here. There's a worker placement spot, and that would give me an additional provision. So now I have that. Now, if any point I could build any of these, if I had a white, a brick, and a wood, I could build one of these, putting out on one of these spots, gaining the good, but then getting this each round. Here it would cost me a white worker, a brick, and 3 wood, or these would cost me 1 white worker, 3 brick, and a wood. This would come out, I would flip this card over and get whatever goodie is on it. What I'm also trying to do is get these workers. So for the first one is free, I could take this and put it in my pile, and it would be available. If I needed this good, the brown good on it, I could discard this from up here, gaining this good, but it goes out and would not be shuffled in my deck. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to place it here. Now the rest of these have a cost associated with them. 1 provision, 1 provision. So I could give up a provision into the supply, and I could buy this card. Now once again, I could discard it immediately out and get the blue worker, or put it into my deck, which I think is a smarter move. I would also gain this one for 1 provision, and I can buy as many of these as I can afford, etc. So I have 2 more provisions. I'm going to buy this card right here and put it in my deck. So now I'm adding to my deck building kind of atmosphere that I'm going to have over here. Now, if I want to defeat this barbarian, I would have to give up 2 blue and a red, and I would gain this if I was able to, but also have to pay the provisions at the bottom. So at this point, I think I have these workers here. I don't have 2 shells, which is what I really need in order to defeat this canal. So I'm going to hold off for right now. The first thing that's going to happen is I'm going to, if this was off the board, if I built this, I can only build 1 of these canals around. I would put this back out. I'm going to shift these down. Then I have to do whatever's on this card. I have to give up 2 shells, which I don't have. Or I can take 1 card from the top of my deck and put it in a discard pile here. So it's eliminating this. Then I'm going to look here, and it tells me I have 1 barbarian that will be added. I will put him out, and I'll refill this deck back up. That's a round of the game. Now, if you win the game, you will draw one of these cards, and you will do what it says. I'm not going to spoil it. Sometimes they'll tell you to read from the storybook. If you look on this one right here, if I accomplish anything with a gold turtle, then I would go into this book, I find that number, read the paragraph, and see what happens. There are cards that will be added to it. But that's the main conceit of the game, and that's a sharp overlook at how to play. Who should buy this game? Anybody looking for a solo campaign game, but you don't want giant miniatures, rolling dice, all that kind of stuff. You want a Euro style, and you don't mind the campaign nature of it and the solo. This is no way to play 2 players, no way to play 3 or 4 players. This is a solo game and going to appeal to solo gamers only. Euro gamers only need to apply. A little bit of luck in the game, but I think that needs to be in a solo experience. So there's some flexibility here on that. Winner for us, absolute keeper.